Okay, so I want to go over Lab 10, which was a little bit difficult, and it seemed like a couple of you guys were struggling in a Discord meeting, so I'm just going to go over it. So, first of all, I have all of this stuff right here, which is the given code, template, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to put it all in here, and I'm going to actually create a new file. I use a different IDE, so it's a little different. So, distance run, I believe, is what it was called. Kotlin, Java, and distance runner. Okay. So now we have all the code in, and we are going to read the problem. So this lab was designed to teach you how to use if statements. The Jones Trucking Company tracks the location of each of its trucks on a grid similar to an XY plane. The home office is at location 00. Read the coordinates of truck A and the coordinates of truck B and determine which is closer to the office. Each collection contains 4 integers, the x-coordinates and the y-coordinates of truck A, just x-coordinate and y-coordinate of truck A, followed by x-coordinate and y-coordinate of truck B. So this is xy of truck A, this is xy of truck B. And same for this one, that's truck A, truck B. Alright. All we're doing is finding out which one is closer to the home office based on what it says. Okay. So here we create object, and it's already done in the template code. So an object is what allows us to see things in other classes, and the only class we have access to right now is just distance runner. But in order to look at other classes, we can use this thing called object, and now we can look at things inside the distance class. That's my way of thinking about it. But yeah, so we're looking at stuff in distance by making an object called test, and we set the coordinates of test. So we call this method, and what we're going to do in here is just set the coordinates. And now, finally, we're just going to print out the closest one. So it only looks like 1, 2, 3 of these things are ever used, but we're just going to fill everything up anyway. So this constructor is not needed, and I'm just going to skip that one. But if we were to ever use this, constructor, we would just set the instance variables, which is x1. We set this instance variable to x1, this instance variable y1 to y1, x2 to x2, y2, y2. So let's do that. Okay. So all we're doing here is storing. So these ints are the ones that can be used all throughout the class. These ints are pretty useless. You only can use these inside of this method itself. So in order to use the ints here, we're going to set them equal to instance variables, which can be used everywhere. So we can use them in here, we can use them in here, use them wherever we want. But we can't use these. The only reason we have these is because they are the parameters that were given. Well, they're not actually given because this is a method actually. but these are not that useful except for giving the information. So, and the constructor usually does whatever set coordinates does, because in the constructor we're just setting the instance variables, and that's the same thing that we're going to do in set coordinates. We're just taking the data given and giving it to the ints that can be used like everywhere. So now we got the easy stuff out of the way. Let's find the closest and print out the closest. So we have distance a equals 0.0. Okay. What we're actually going to do is now do the math part. So distance a equals, I'm going to pull up the math part so you guys can see. Okay, so it said right here that the truck A coordinates would be x1 and y1, and we're trying to find the distance from this truck x1 y1, which is in this case just 3, -2, and find a distance from x1 y1 to x2 y2, and in that case it'd be, sorry, x1 and y1 would be 0, 0. Well, technically it doesn't matter because a negative times a negative, so negative squared is always a positive. So it technically doesn't matter, but in my code, x1 is always going to be 0, y1 is always going to be 0. And x2 and y2 are going to be the coordinates of the truck that I'm going to be coding in. So to use this, so if we're getting a distance from truck A to 0, 0, then we would just put x1 here, 0 here, and y1 here, 0 there. So that's what our distance would be from 0, 0 to distance A. So we see this radical, so I'm going to do math.square roots. And inside the radical we have this squared, so I'm going to do x2. So x2, like I said earlier, is just going to be x1 minus, and x1 is going to be 0. And this is the quantity that's squared. Square this. And to do that, I'm just going to multiply it by itself. That's the same thing as squaring. And that's not in parentheses. Okay, now that's better. And y2 is going to be y1, and y1 is just going to be 0. So we're getting the distance from 0, 0, which is x1, y1, to x2, y2. In our case, it's going to be x1, y1. So y1. That's square this quantity. Okay. Just gonna copy and paste this because all we're gonna do is change a few variables anyway. Okay, not that. There. Okay. So now if we're going to get the distance from 0, 0 to truck B, and truck B is located at x2, y2. So here, instead of putting x2, we're going to put x2 from the equation, which is right here. This is going to be 0 as always, and this is going to be y2, which is the y location of truck B minus 0, and y1 0. So like that. Should that be working? And now, if distance A, then we're going to type this. So in order to get whichever one is closer, we would do distance A plus distance B. And now we're going to return closer truck. So distance A is less than distance B. I'm going to return, oh, we're not going to return. We're not going to return quite yet. We're going to use this string result thing. So result, and by the way, I just put string up there so that I can actually use it, because it has to be declared before I ever use it. So that's what I was just doing. So result equals so now that if distance B is less than distance A, that means we know that distance B is going to be close. And if they equal each other, then we print out the result. None of the test cases actually have that, but I'm just going to include it anyway. And that's it. Two strings never used, we don't have to use that. I didn't put anything in it. And now we're just going to set the main method. So first of all, let's try and run this. So we put in 3, negative 2, negative 5. A is closer, that's right. I'll test this with 5, 5, 1, 2. B is closer, that works. So now we're just going to get the main method all tidied up, and that's going to be it for the lab. So I'm going to copy and paste this in order to get more inputs, because I don't think you guys have learned loops yet, so I'm just going to do that. Okay, actually, let's not do that yet. Okay, so whenever you're copying and pasting, there's going to be a couple more ints that are created of the same name. And that's not something that's allowed, so we have to just use the same exact variables that we used before, except setting them instead of declaring them. And we don't need a new distance object anymore, because we already created it up here. And we set coordinates to a new, we set new things to these instance variables whenever we use the set coordinates. And we print out the closest. We don't print out the closest, but we print out whatever a result is. Whatever is returned from this method. So this is the second time, this is the third time, this is the fourth time. And there's only 4 inputs here. So 3, negative 2, negative 5, negative 3. A is in fact closer, and I forgot to do the formatting, so I'm going to do that now. So we want a little blank spot right here. So I'm just going to do a print line right there. And we're going to do like 3 lines between here and there. I only put 2 new lines here because this is also a new line, so that's 3. And after we enter the last one, actually I did not need to do that. Okay. So after we enter the last one, do that. And after we find out which is closest, do a couple new lines. Bam, 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 bam. That's it. That's not 3, that's a 4. Okay, 3, negative 2, negative 5. 3. A is closer, it's formatted right. B is closer. B is closer. A is closer. Okay, very cool. So this all works. And this is lab 10. Sorry if this was a little bit out of the way. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. And you can also ask me during the weekly Wednesday tutoring sessions from 6 to 8. And yeah, that's it for lab 10. So